Hey everyone, welcome back to the Wimpy Studio, and today I'm here to review the latest Directorial Kid movie, The Last Straw. So another animated adaptation, and I would say this was the best of the four adaptations. You had the original, Roderick Rolls, and then Cabin Fever, and then The Last Straw. So this is the fourth adaptation. So I'm glad that they went back into The Last Straw, because they did not do a Last Straw live action. They skipped from Roderick Rolls to Dog Days and instead made The Last Straw and Dog Days into its own movie, which worked pretty well with the story that they were trying to tell, except that it took away the kind of some of the plot with Greg and his mom, but it worked out pretty well because it expanded on the stuff with his dad, and it gave us a more Holly for that. Which Holly's really not a character in Dog Days. It's her older sister, Heather, who's also in the Dog Days movie. But so a lot of changes in this movie, and a lot of things stayed the same. But overall, I enjoyed the movie. Again, easily my favorite of the four. The animation style is growing on me. I'm not really complaining about that anymore. I would say my biggest problem with the movie is, so in the books, Greg's more of a selfish character. It's almost like he deserves the bad stuff that happens to him because he in some way lets it happen to him, and he's also a jerk to Raleigh. So you're not necessarily rooting for Greg at times throughout these books. And in this movie, Greg's more misunderstood and just like a silly kid, silly dork. And it's interesting the change in his character. And to me, I don't mind it because it makes, anything to make Greg more likable, because there's just moments in these books where he is just terrible. And it's just part of, it's just part of the story and the character and all. But, they make him just like a silly goof in this movie for a good chunk of it. You had the opening being he's trying to get the key out of the door, and then he gets on the door with both of his feet because I guess he's small enough to do it in this world. My thing with the live action movies, they had to stay in a sense of reality because they were being filmed by real actors. I would prefer if these animated movies tried to do that, not go to the bizarre just because they can, keep it round in reality. I would have liked that, but they're experimenting. They're taking advantage. They can do whatever they want with animation. They can show whatever they want. They can have characters fly up in the air, because they can. So, which is fine, whatever. But, so basically, I'm going to read the two synopses. So for the book and then for the movie. So for the book, it says, let's face it, Greg Heffley will never change his wimpy ways. Somebody just needs to explain that to Greg's father. You see, Frank Heffley actually thinks he can get his son to toughen up, and he enlists Greg in organized sports and other manly endeavors. Of course, Greg is easily able to sidestep his father's efforts to change him, but when Greg's dad threatens to send him to military academy, Greg realizes he has to shape up or get shipped out. And then synopsis for the movie says, when laid-back Greg finds himself at odds with his dad's outsized expectations, pressure builds to turn his act around. After a series of hilarious near disasters, Greg's dad presents him with an ultimatum that just might challenge Greg's wimpy ways for good. So, pretty similar synopses. Now, I didn't read the Last Straw book before this or before the movie, and I probably should have, but I just didn't really have time. But I just did a skim through, and I realized that it really doesn't focus heavily on Greg and his dad. It's an underlying thing throughout the book. You see Frank continuing to get annoyed with Greg, but you had a lot of filler in there too. You had a lot of plots at the school. You had the time capsule plot. You had the kid's birthday party. A lot of different smaller plots, and you can say filler, but filler has changed a lot when it comes to Wimpy Kid. Filler used to be pretty entertaining and add something to the plot of some regard, even if it didn't directly connect to the main storyline. It was fun to watch. You also had that school dance, which I always thought was kind of weird. It's probably good they didn't include that. Yeah. But yeah, in the last straw, you didn't see any scenes at school in the movie. No scenes at school. Holly Hills was completely taken out of the movie, which was kind of a bummer. But it's kind of whatever. You saw Fregley very briefly, which Fregley is not really in this book a whole lot. You do have like that scene where Greg is out shoveling and he encounters Fregley in the book, and you pretty much have that exactly in the movie, except Rowley's there. Fregley is also a part of the Boy Scouts, which I don't think in the movie, and I don't think he was in the book, as far as I can tell. But it's interesting. The whole Boy Scouts and the Spag Union storyline doesn't come up until like the last, maybe fifth or sixth of the book. It's really late in the book when all of that starts again, because there's a lot of other stories going on in this. You had the soccer plot, so basically a lot of stuff stayed the same and a lot of stuff changed. It's kind of the point I'm trying to make. It's definitely the book, or the thing that they changed the most from the out of all four movies. They definitely changed this one the most, which I enjoy The Last Straw a lot. It was just a classic journal, fun to read. Again, it's definitely in my top six favorite books, because my top six favorite books are the first six books. They're just not in that exact order, but I do plan on doing a tier ranking at some point over winter break. So stay tuned for that. I don't know exactly when it'll be, but sometime in the next 3 to 4 weeks. But The Last Straw is somewhere in that top six. I just don't know exactly where it's at. So, but it starts off with a scene from the book, and that's where they're going to church, which that's when the whole key getting on the door weird incident happened, which sets up the plot that Frank hasn't taught his son what he's supposed to, which I did appreciate in the movie, that they actually had Frank reflecting and like thinking about stuff, and you had, Susan kind of like talking to him, like getting scenes with just the parents, which that's the good thing about a movie that's told from multiple perspectives, is that you get scenes like that and thoughts like that. So I did appreciate that, where, in the Dog Days, we saw that too in that movie. So I'm glad that and I'm glad that like the issue throughout the movie wasn't about any school stuff. It wasn't about Holly. It was about Greg and his dad. And I like that they just focused on that one single plot instead of having a variety of things. Now, the thing about so the first movie was the safety patrols and them with the kids, and then the worm incident, and then they put it in this movie for some reason, and I didn't really feel like that fit. I don't think that was super necessary. They did have the shoveling scene because they marketed this as a Christmas movie, and I really wondered why. I forgot that there is a good chunk of the book that takes place around Christmas time, because Greg and Rowley start their own snow shoveling business, which we did see in this. So that made sense. It wasn't a Christmas movie. Just the beginning of it took place at Christmas, just like the beginning of The Last Straw took place around the Christmas New Year's time. I don't think they should have marketed it as a Christmas movie, because it confused the hell out of me. I'm like, are they trying to make this all around Christmas just because it's Christmas time? That didn't make any sense to me, but whatever. But yeah, you had the scene with them going to church and Greg sitting on Manny's chocolate bunny. So that was pretty much verbatim what happened, with the exclusion of the Holly Hills of it all. But you had the soccer plot line. We just saw like Greg in the game. Now they had the coach, which, let me find the coach's name real quick in this. Mr. Lynch. So in this Wimpy kid, it's the Warrens who have this like perfect son. So they changed that part of it. So you kind of had like this whole other plot of like Frank kind of like comparing himself to Mr. Warren, who seems like perfect and has like a perfect relationship with his son. So that's like an ongoing thread in here, which you don't have in the book at all. Again, I like that the movie gave Frank some actual like contemplation about everything, which again, I'm like really trying not to compare it to Dog Days, because Dog Days, was better than this, obviously. But for what this was, they did a good job with Frank's character. But again, the Spag Union and Boy Scout stuff comes really late in the book, where in the movie, it's pretty much the main plot that comes pretty, after you have like the snow shoveling stuff, then you kind of jump into the Boy Scouts thing. You have the soccer thing or the soccer thing first, and then you have the Boy Scouts thing. But you have like the Spag Union plot kind of like a thread throughout, where with like Frank kind of having this plan to send him, where in the book you just had Frank coming across this kid. What was his name? It was Linwood Heath, coming across this kid who went to Spag Union. So, yeah. Again, a lot of changes to be expected. Now, the biggest change was the scene where they go on the camp out, and you had a lot more of that in the movie than you had in the book. And basically, we kind of find out here that Mr. Warren's relationship with his kid is not all that Frank made thought it was. They actually don't get along fully, which makes Frank realize that it's normal for fathers to have issues with their sons. It's completely normal and it's okay. So I like how they demonstrated that. Where in the book we didn't really see that. We just the book, it's a good book for what it is, but it really lacks the whole Frank's thought process throughout all of this, because it's told from Greg's point of view, which I do kind of wonder what it would have been like if we had like a Frank or Susan point of view. That would be so interesting to read. But yeah, so the scene where Greg and Frank watch movies together, they go there after the camp thing, which I really like that. I really like that scene from Dog Days. It was so heartwarming. And then they had it here too, which was the final scene of it, which they ended it differently. The last straw, the book ends with setting up Dog Days, where you had this new girl joining the country club for to set up like a kind of like a love interest thing for Greg and Raleigh. But you had the movie specifically end on the Greg and Frank thing, which I did like. Now, I'm not saying I preferred the movie over the book. It's a good adaptation of the book, I will say that. I think the one thing I would have wanted was Holly Hills. I would have liked to see that, just because it's such a big part of The Last Straw. But they didn't, and maybe they thought because the live action movies focused so much on her that they didn't need her. Maybe they really wanted this movie to be focused on Greg and his dad, and I get that. I think it did a great job at that. So I was pretty impressed. We got a good amount of Raleigh too in all of it. We got a little bit more Fregley than I thought. We didn't get Alex Aruda or any of the school plot. No school at all. And we got one scene of Greg in the principal's office or whoever that was. But again, that was only because they added in that plot of them being safety patrols, where that was a thing in the first book. But whatever. So yeah, great, not great, good movie. Easily my favorite of the four again. So for an adaptation of the book, it was really well done. Now, what movie will they adapt next? I think I read somewhere, and let me check. I'm on the Wimpy Kid fandom page right now. The next movie is going to be The Getaway. So they're clearly just trying to do the Christmas related stuff, which is weird. I don't know how I feel about that, but we also know that it says here Fregley will appear in this film. I don't know where you got that confirmation from. Some sort of I guess like the voice actor who plays Fregley is okay. So I guess he's in The Getaway, which doesn't make any sense because Fregley's like absent from whatever. We'll see. We're not going to get the movie until December of next year, but The Getaway was an okay book. It'll be a fun movie. I think the one thing about the later books, they're going to make really entertaining movies because of how much stuff they have going on. Like the Deep End is they'll be experts at, because they already know how to go out of their comfort zone and have characters do things that they wouldn't normally do, like getting onto doors to try to get a key out with their feet. Like what? So The Deep End will be a really fun movie in this style. But yeah, we'll have The Getaway. And then there's not another Christmas book after that. So I would assume they'll do The Getaway next, and then they'll go back and do Dog Days. I really just wish they followed the order, because you think about it, if we would have gotten a book each year, we would be on the Ugly Truth would have just come out. Or if they did still skip a year, we would have gotten Dog Days this year. And I really wish they just would have followed the order. We could have gotten The Last Straw 2 years earlier instead of Cabin Fever. But again, he wanted to do a Cabin Fever adaptation, so I get that. But still. So, comment down below, what did you think of The Last Straw adaptation? Did you like it? Did you not like it? How was it compared to the book? I think most people agree the book's better, but like, of every adaptation for Wimpy Kid, the book's always been better. So it's just something, it's like inevitable. So, but I'm also going to be again posting a tier ranking sometime over winter break, so stay tuned for that. And yeah, thanks everyone for listening. Like, comment, subscribe, and bye everyone.